6 jets flying 18 inches apart, nearly at the speed of sound.
You are microseconds of lag from a life-threatening situation.
Champion Nation, hang on. You're going to meet Colonel Justin Astro Elliott, the commander of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbird demonstration team during their epic Netflix movie that rolled out in May of this year. Stand by.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Hey, Grampian Nation, welcome back. And joining me today, I'm starstruck. I have Colonel Justin, call sign Astro Elliott, with us, who has, I'm going to read a list because he's currently chief of current operations at NORAD, the North American
Aerospace Defense.
Aerospace Defense, okay, yep. And U.S. Northern Command. He formerly has been in college in Rome, Italy, at the NATO Defense College. He was, prior to that, the commander-leader of the U.S. Air Force demonstration squadron, known as the Thunderbirds. He was Thunderbird 1. And before that, he trained as Thunderbird 21. You're like the new guy. And prior to that, he was the commander and director of the Ops 59th Test and Evaluation Squadron. And prior to that, he was an experimental fighter test pilot. Before that, the F15 Eagle, he was F15 Eagle operational test pilot. And prior to that, USAF test pilot school and also USAF weapons school and the Thunderbirds. You're the only dude who has been at the graduated test pilot school, weapons school, and Thunderbirds. Is that accurate?
That's true, Jim. That's
You're
true.
The only person, I should say, the only person of any kind. Sir, it is an honor to have you on the Grampian. We are just thrilled. We hooked up. I was telling you about my grandson. The Thunderbirds inspired him to fly. He actually first wanted to, because we're in the Seattle market, he wanted to hang out with Blue Angels. And I said, no, we're not stupid. We don't land on boats. No Navy landings, right?
That's right.
Okay. Also, Justin, you last May, they completed Air Force Elite, the Thunderbirds Netflix debut, which featured you in May of 2025. So you're all over Netflix, man. And that's where our readers will get to go, or our listeners will get to go inside the cockpit of a legendary Thunderbird F-16 and fly with the squadron, man. This is like the coolest movie, and it shows the sacrifice and the operational details of getting these birds up in the air and to do what they do. So with all that said, can I call you Astro?
You can.
That's your work name, right? Or
That's right.
I should call you Colonel out of deference and respect, but you're a pilot. I'm a pilot. Hey, Astro, welcome to the Grampian, man. How are you?
Thank you, sir. It's great to be here. Incredible experience to get to work with you and to get to talk to your audience a little bit.
All right. Well, we have a lot of pilots in the audience, so they're really going to dig this, but we got to go back a little farther for the moms who listen and stuff like that. Tell us about you, Justin. You were born and raised in
Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas.
Yep. All
right. And your mom and dad, what did they do for a living?
Okay, so my parents actually immigrated here from Canada. So they grew up in East Coast Canada.
Oh my.
Came down to the United States initially. Just looking for education. My dad ended up going into sales after getting a degree at North Texas State University, and so I was born in the U.S. and I was raised in the U.S. by two Canadian parents, and went back to East Coast Canada all the time. So got a pretty interesting diversity of backgrounds and experiences with those two regions. But my parents were awesome at really presenting that picture to me of, hey, it doesn't matter how good you are at something. It matters how much effort you put into that thing. So if I was willing to chase something, then they were willing to support that passion. And so they kind of grew me into someone who would chase after dreams. And I'm going to give you probably my favorite example of that from my childhood. When I look back at it, it's really funny. So 14 years old, I wanted to fly. I had seen Top Gun. I knew that NASA astronauts were pilots. I was like, all right, somehow I need to fly something. So I found this thing called a discovery flight, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to get in an airplane for the first time. And my parents looked at me and said, absolutely not. That's that's not something that we're ready to support here in the Elliott family. And I was like, okay. I was like, what do I have to do? And so I think they fully intended this to fail, but I was a swimmer at the time, and I was a breaststroker, so one type of stroke. And my parents told me to basically get a double A time in my off event, which was the 200 freestyle, that they considered to be an impossible task. Yeah, well, I did it because that was my opportunity to get into an airplane. So I went out there in the next swim meet and swam as fast as my legs and arms could carry me to try to get that time cut. And sure enough, they followed through. So they let me fly for the first time when I was 14. I was just hooked at that point. Wow. It was such an amazing experience, as you know.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So, that really prepares you for flying, because swimming takes an incredible amount of discipline. Especially if you're a club swimmer or team swimmer, you're swimming in the morning, you're swimming at night, you're sacrificing a lot for the sport and for the team, aren't you?
It's 100% true. By the time I got to high school, I was up at 4 a.m. every morning to get to swim practice, swim 2 hours, go to school, get out of school, straight to swim practice for another 2 hours. And then you would run and lift weights on a lot of the days too. Every Saturday it was 7 to 10 swim practice. And then Sunday was like your one day to try to recover your muscles and your strength. And, oh, by the way, do all your homework and everything else you had going on in life to get ready for the next week. For me, that carried all the way through college. Swimming was a big part of getting into Yale and being able to apply to some pretty big universities with a legitimate shot at making it across the line. So I give swimming a lot of credit as a sport.
How did your shoulders hold up?
So
breaststroker helps. I mean, doesn't it?
It hurts. Swimming hurts a lot. And,
okay.
I think the good news is when you've grown up with that as the expectation of how you're going to feel every day is just, in some mild state of pain, it really helps you adjust to things like staff work and, and any other intense work that you do as you keep going forward in life.
Yeah. Any other sports that you played in high school or that kind of thing?
Not seriously.
Okay.
Not seriously from a sports perspective. Swimming was kind of my thing. There were a lot of other activities that I give a lot of credit to, though. I got into theater a little bit, believe it or not, and then sort of translated that into this competition called National History Day, where every year you would learn a lot about some figure in history according to a theme and then act that out in a 10-minute monologue. And sometimes that would get all the way to national level competition, which is just it's funny how I never thought much about that one as a kid, but I maybe use that skill set the most in life right now. The ability to kind of take a complex topic and distill it down to a short, bite-size, direct piece of information to a diverse audience. Yeah. And then to get grilled by judges on the depth of your knowledge. It was an amazing competition.
Prove it.
When I look back at it.
Judges want you to prove it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Yale, Lux et Veritas, light and truth.
Very impressive.
I had a Yale sweatshirt when I was a kid, and my dad told me that. So he gets all the credit. So did you swim 4 years at Yale?
I did.
Wow.
Actually. Well, so to be clear, I swam 3 years and a little bit. And then in my fourth year, I became the cadet wing commander for what at the time was a detachment 115, which was actually University of Connecticut's ROTC detachment that brought people in from a bunch of different universities in the Northeast. Okay. And when Det 115 made me the wing commander, it actually became impossible for me to keep swimming for the team because realistically, I was 3 to 4 times a week up at University of Connecticut, and balancing that with swimming was impossible. The good news was that was my senior year.
Yeah.
By that point, I was well aware that I wasn't going to the Olympics or anything. And as much as I wanted to continue with the team, I knew my life was about to move forward to the Air Force. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Okay. So coming out of ROTC into the Air Force, do people kind of look down on you a little bit, like when you go into OCS? Or, I mean, you're one of those. You're not a ring tapper. You're not a, you're not someone who came up through the enlisted ranks. You are like the gimme guy who already got his education.
Yeah, I got to have a little bit of fun while I was doing it too, like live a normal life and still end up in the Air Force. In the early time, like right away when you're at pilot training, you're certainly outnumbered. There are a whole lot more Air Force Academy grads in your pilot training class than there are ROTC grads. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Those people earned it. That is a tough college experience right down the street from me here. And I have a lot of respect for people who go through the academy. I think the Air Force is pretty brilliant in the way they diversify their commissioning sources, though, because, the academy produces an enormously high average. I mean, you can really count on an academy grad to be able to speak, write, understand engineering, really grasp the big picture of why they're in the Air Force. And then ROTC brings in just a really different crowd, like some different perspectives on life and what it's all about. And when you put those together, you get good things. So it all works out in the end.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I had no idea that you came through ROTC, and that's a commendable thing, especially, I mean, that's no slouch deal graduating from Yale either.
It was tough. There were moments when I was swimming and doing mechanical engineering and doing ROTC at the same time, and I was like, maybe taking on a little bit too much here, but it all works out in the end. And that became like my life theme, by the way. I always had 3 different things going on that I
you got to keep that bucket full, man. You got to keep it going, right? Yeah. And that's one of the themes of the Grampian is we talk to people who have lived incredibly full lives. So, and you're definitely in that. So you get out of school and your first stop is?
I went straight. Well, okay. I had a very brief stop at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where I was an executive officer for an operational support squadron commander. And I learned a lot from that. It was a C5 unit. It was kind of my first foray into the Air Force at all.
Yeah.
And they threw me on a plane to Spain and Iraq, and I got to see the complexities of air transport and the logistics that go behind these operations that I think we all take for granted. So great learning experience.
Yeah.
Very briefly after that, sorry, Jim, did you have a question on that one before I move on?
No, man, I just talked to a C5 pilot and I was just, I'm like, you're flying a house, buddy.
Yes. Yes. I still don't think I could refuel a C5 in the air. I'm serious. I tried that simulator that they have and I just couldn't believe the forces that were in play.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty experienced test pilot, but that looks extremely difficult. And I think it just takes reps and reps and reps to be able to do it.
There you go. There you go. So then you're done at Dover and you head to
off to Laughlin in Texas. So this was the beginning of pilot training for me, and that was the job I had commissioned into. And so I was excited. I was really excited to finally get my hands on Air Force training. I had a brief experience with Air Force training when I was a freshman in college. Went out to the academy and did their jump program out there, where they throw you out of an airplane free fall for the first 5 jumps of your life.
Yeah.
And after only 2 weeks of training, in that environment, I jumped out for my first jump and I had a line over, which for those who understand parachutes, that's when the line wraps around your chute, ties it into a little bow and just spins you the whole time while you're still falling far too fast to live through the impact that the ground's about to give you. So that was my first jump. And
wow.
I still remember throw, arch, look, pull, arch, check, towel pack. That checklist is 25 years later still buried in my mind because it saved my life literally. And jettisoned the bad chute, pulled a reserve chute, and landed safely. And then they were like, "Cool, good job. Get back out there again." So it was a pretty good reality check in the expectations that the Air Force has on its young officers and cadets.
Wow.
And so I went to pilot training with that experience in my mind, knowing that I was about to learn from incredible human beings that have a rigorous and vetted training program, and it made pilot training an awesome experience.
So are you done jumping out of perfectly good airplanes now?
Yes, sir. I think so.
Me too.
Yeah, I'd like to stay and land the aircraft in the next extent possible.
Yeah, I'm a one and done. I took my daughters on their 21st and 19th birthdays, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I fly these. I don't jump out of them. This is nuts.
Right. Right.
All right. So, what's the biggest challenge? So you're going from college, in essence,
Mhm.
to fighter jock school with a bunch of academy graduates.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think the academy grads knew the system well, and kind of knew how to balance the expectations the Air Force has on you. So, here's the big peek behind the curtain. The Air Force's general philosophy is to throw way, way, way too much at you to make it completely impossible for you to do all of the things that you're expected to do that night in preparation for the next day. And it kind of teaches you time management and priorities at a really early age. And I think the academy grads were very used to that concept of, hey, okay, I know they told you to read 3,000 pages and memorize it, and to also prepare your brief for your sortie and to review your aerodynamic engineering and math. But the reality is they need you to read this 6 pages because that's what you're going to focus on the next day. And eventually they build that. So the academy grads got it. I mean, they got it, and they knew how to handle that situation. For me, I was like, okay, they told me to read 3,000 pages. I guess I got to read 3,000 pages. So those first few weeks were really rough. And very quickly I realized, okay, this is impossible on purpose. I know what you're doing here. You're just trying to see how we handle failure and the inability to complete tasks, because that's such a skill, isn't it? Like when you face the reality of air combat or really anything in life, you're going to have about 30 to 40% of the information you wish you had, and you're going to have to make a decision based on what you've got.
And even with all that, you're facing task saturation at kind of an unprecedented level, especially with these modern aircraft.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And that's the lesson that they're trying to get through to you is, it's just hard, and that's okay. And you're going to do the best you can with what you've got. The other thing I picked up from pilot training that I found, I think swimming helps understand this, but the concept of absolute accountability, like real accountability, this concept that there are no participation trophies in pilot training. You can prepare all you want. You can study everything, and it just doesn't matter when you get into the sky. It's on you to have the hands and feet to fly the airplane well enough and to keep that situational awareness bubble wide enough to survive the day.
Yeah.
And you're going to have good days and bad, but you're accountable for both. And that's just a reality of aviation, that there's no shortcut to it. You just have to learn that and be ready to go every day.
And there's only one person to point at if something goes wrong.
100%.
There you go.
Yep.
All right. So you're jumping from there into the F15 Eagle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's like it's not an F-16, but it's as close to perfect as you can get without jumping in an F-16 is what I've heard.
Yeah, I think some of the F-15 pilots would have a different perspective on that. So the one that I flew was the Strike Eagle, and it was the E model, and it was just oh man, it's a special airplane. It gives you that crew concept really early on, where you're not alone up there, and my squadron was the 335th Fighter Squadron out of Seymour, the Chiefs. Really high performing squadron. Sometimes you get these subcultures in the Air Force that just happen to click, and whether it's leadership, and I do give a lot of credit to my first squadron commander, Gipper Bunch, for creating the right environment. But underneath him were a whole lot of officers that just wanted to do extraordinarily well, and it showed that the squadron was amazing. Yeah. And when we went to Afghanistan for the first time in 2009, 2010, it was just a really high performing squadron in all ways. Nothing really phased the squadron over there, and we got into some pretty crazy situations. I had a battle over the mountains called Cop Keating, which the book Red Platoon is actually about that fight, where we showed up with valley full of smoke and a whole lot of machine gun positions and 350 people firing on 8 Americans, and we had to get them out of that situation, which took about 12 hours of alert launches and included a bomber strike and like all kinds of things you can't imagine. And all this while we're dealing with emergencies. I have this memory of my backseater, Mule Keeley, who he just retired actually this week. Mule and I are on final with bombs queued up to 3 different machine gun positions on top of the mountains. And we knew these weapons were critical to saving the guys that were getting fired upon. And right as I'm rolled out on final, about to push the button to release these weapons, I get a hydraulic failure, a massive hydraulic failure, which cost me my radar, my landing gear, my speed brakes, my ability to stop the aircraft in all ways. My ability to refuel the aircraft was also gone. And that's scary over Afghanistan. And so, we talked about Air Force training, but this is a great scenario to understand how good it is, because everything had gone wrong. Systems are failing. And I remember very quickly going through that hydraulic chart in my mind to think about what systems had failed and whether any of them had affected my bombs. When I push this button, were they going to go to the wrong targets? Were they going to fail to release and hang, now live on the wings, all of which would have been very bad. And so that's what's going through my mind, because we've got about a second and a half to decide. And I remember my backseater Mule, all I heard from the back was, "You good?" And I go, "I'm good." Bomb's gone. And they hit the target. And so, that's the expectation in combat is It's not about you. It's about the guys on the ground and the guys that you're defending. And you've got to be ready to act when something goes wrong.
Yeah. There's another lesson there. Keep flying the airplane.
Right. That's exactly right. Right.
Keep flying the airplane, because when those alarms and bells and whistles go off, people think you automatically know what it is, and it's just the gerbil cage just starts spinning.
That's right. The extremely rare single failure emergency, I've never seen it. Yeah. I'm sure you haven't either. It's always a complex emergency because things don't fail gracefully the way we all hope they do.
Yeah. And my only conversation with the folks at the FAA was like, I'm in extreme ice. I'm in extreme turbulence with icing 0-0 on long final. And I just had my trim go out, and I've got a runaway trim on the aircraft. And that's why I don't know why I'm turning right. So we got a nice chat about that.
That's it. And it goes back to that absolute accountability, because when you're in that situation, like, no one's coming to help.
Nope.
It's you and that machine, and you got to get
training. Yep. Don't panic. Yeah. All right. So now you're going to get out of the Eagle and you're going to go to test pilot school, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. So I had a quick stop in between there where I actually went to weapons school in the F15 Eagle. So that was the jet that I went to.
Then there's that. That's pretty legit training too, isn't it?
It's really intense. In fact, it's hard to say which one is the most difficult. It's impossible to say which one's the most valuable. Impossible. They're very different programs. Mm-hmm. But because we'll probably talk about both a little bit, I'll just say weapons school is intense training and leadership training. Weapons school is all about putting you in a situation that there is no solution for it. And so you're expected to figure it out, and then you're accountable for how that goes when you lead the sortie. So you're leading every week 3 to 4 times. And the syllabus just grows from leading 2 airplanes to all the way up to these 100 jet packages fighting 100 enemy fighters. And it's incredibly intense, but it teaches you how to lead in combat. And it's, I'm convinced, the best course in the world for that. Yeah. And so I was really happy to have that experience behind me, because it just teaches you to deal with dynamic situations. That also, absolutely, my favorite leadership mantra comes from the weapons school's motto, which is be humble, be approachable, be credible. That has never left me, because I think we all like working for people who embody those values, right? Like, they don't think it's about them. They're approachable with problems and with ideas, and they have the credibility to actually back it up and execute those ideas when they come to you. So I give a huge amount of credit to weapons school for training me and for training all of our other weapons officers.
But weapons school is more than that, because they're teaching you to fly better. They're making you a better pilot as well, are they not?
Yes. Yeah. Very intense. And another example of absolute accountability, because your instructor takes you out there in that first couple of weeks where you're doing defensive BFM, so 1v1 fighting, and then offensive and then high aspect. And like you have to win. It is not there. You can't pass the ride until you beat your instructor, which if you just think about that, like that is a really high level of expectations. And I love that they don't let the standards slip. I mean, unfortunately, like we lose people from the course all the time because they won't lower the bar. You have to get good. You have to get to a point where you have that credibility of being the best instructor out there. And to do that, you've got to beat the ones that are challenging you.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are not slouches in the other planes either,
No.
are they?
Yeah, they're the very best. The ones that have that black border on their patch that are teaching
Yeah.
at weapons school are, oh man, are they good? They're really good, and they're practiced because they're doing it all the time.
Yeah, and then you finish up at weapons school and you go to.
I did an operational test for a little bit, which is just to differentiate that in people's minds. Operational test is not specification based. We don't actually care whether the contractor did the thing we asked them to do. We care whether this thing is effective in combat and is suitable enough to take to war. So operational test is not experimental. It's not really specification based. It's more of this macro picture of how does this new thing fit into the big picture of combat.
Yeah.
And that's, so I did that for about 3 years after weapons school. And a lot of the operational test pilots are weapons school grads, not test pilot school grads. I know that's a little bit confusing, but it's because you have that macro picture of integrating these systems into our fighting force, right? Building the whole football team out of the 6 jets. And the squadron that I was in was the 422 Test and Evaluation Squadron. Very unique because it had about 10 of each fighter type under one squadron commander. So I see the smile on your face, Jim. Yeah, that's the dream, right? Like you've got 10 Raptors, 10 F-35s, 10 F-15s, 10 F-16, 10 A-10. Just amazing to be able to fly them together every day and see how these things fit.
Did you have to qualify in all those aircraft then?
No. So when you're there as an F-15 weapons school grad, you are an F-15 guy. So you fly in the F-15 division, but you integrate constantly. So it's not, when you're in a typical fighter squadron, if you can kind of picture this, you're on an F-15 base. So you've got 4 Strike Eagle squadrons. They're all the same. You integrate with them a lot, but you never get to fly with an F-16 or an F-22, except for some very rare occasions like red flag deployments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, in the 422, it's every single day. You share the airspace, so you're just like, hey, Raptor, I need to test my new radar against your stealth capabilities. Let's line them up and see what happens, and you really get to the answers quickly that way.
And you're trying to figure out if stuff actually works in combat.
100%.
That's the bottom
line,
the right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. With all the different speeds and all the different agilities of all those separate aircraft, that makes that's where was that at?
That was at Nellis.
Nellis.
It's actually at Nellis Air Force Base, right where Red Flag and the Thunderbirds are. So there's a lot going on at Nellis Air Force Base, by the way.
Well, yeah, but
you're
that aircraft, that airspace has to be set aside for you then. I mean, like nobody's penetrating because there's no room for you.
Yes, it is. It's 150 miles by 100 miles. It's a huge carve out of the Nevada desert. And it's got, if it was just flat desert, it would be almost useless to us, but it's got it all. It's got a lot of terrain out there, a lot of varying altitudes. And oh, by the way, I'm going to make you jealous. It also allows you to go supersonic at almost all altitudes. There are huge sections of it where you can be supersonic at 100 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Very few restrictions on the airspace. You can drop weapons all over the place. I wouldn't recommend living in this area, but I would absolutely recommend flying there.
Yeah, well, you can't really get in trouble flying there, can you?
No, you certainly can, because there's this carve out in the middle that some of you have looked up on Google Maps that you even as an active Air Force pilot, you're not allowed to go in there. Yeah. So you get in huge trouble there.
Well, I mean, there's always that big R.
Yeah, exactly.
For restricted airspace. Yeah. Okay. Then are you getting ready to leave Nellis now, or what? What's happened after that?
So leaving Nellis is when I went to test pilot school, and I've got to give a lot of credit to some senior mentors that I have here, because it's worth understanding that when I joined the Air Force, my goal was NASA astronaut, 100%. That was the motivation for being there. Yeah, I wanted to fly, but I was flying with a goal. And if I reel it back to my first fighter squadron for just a second, when my senior leaders pulled me aside, so my squadron commander, Gipper, and his boss, Jack Ruby, both individually pulled me aside and asked, "Hey, what do you want to do? You're doing well. What do you want to do with your life?" And I told them, "Well, I want to go to test pilot school." And they said, "Okay, that's great. What else?" And I was like, "Well, sir, I think that's it. That's that's the goal." And because typically, and I think even young pilots know this, you get to choose one of those things: weapons school or test pilot school. Very different paths. One goes towards leadership and senior leadership in the Air Force. The other is all about science, engineering, and progressing towards ultimately experimental flight test. So I wanted to go this way, right? That was the plan, because that's astronauts over here. Yeah. And those guys convinced me, hey, you've got time to go to weapons school first. If you're willing to do it, you have time to do it. You've got to apply and all that stuff. And I appreciate that so much, because without that weapons school experience, I'd be a different leader. And so I took that gamble. And life is like that, right? I knew that if I took that gamble and went down that path of going to weapons school first, there was a pretty strong chance that that was going to be the end of the line, and that I'd be on this path, and I'd be not stuck there is the wrong word, but that I would lose that test pilot opportunity. Mm-hmm. And there's so many times where if you take that gamble and put one foot in front of the other and go down the road, that it probably won't work out, right? It probably won't work out. Yeah. But there's a guarantee that if you don't take a step in that direction, well, now it's definitely not going to work out. Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? Like that comes up, I think, a lot in our lives. And I think it's good to know that it's okay to step off knowing that this probably is going to fail, might just fail.
Well, and then that's where a mentor comes in too, where those guys were actually looking out for you, and they were, yes. And how commendable is that?
It's incredible, because if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have seen it as possible. I wouldn't have seen it. And I probably wouldn't have spoken up and ever asked about it, because it was so out of the ordinary. It was just not something that as a younger officer that you speak up about. And so by them seeing that and giving me that chance, I was able to do both. So out of operational test, I had another senior mentor, Dragon Tykert. He just left the Air Force as a 1-star not too long ago. And I remember him asking, "Hey, so you're done with weapons school, and are you going to test pilot school?" And I was like, "Is that really possible? Like, sir, is this the plan? Is this actually possible?" So he said, "Yep, it is." And he wrote me a recommendation letter to test pilot school that just said, "Accept now for strategic impact." That was his only line. That's what he wrote. and that worked.
So yes, sir.
Yep. So I got into test pilot school, and that one is that's a complicated course too. It's a year long, so it's actually twice as long as weapons school. And if weapons school is advanced training, test pilot school is advanced education. It is focused not on memorizing your weapon system and becoming the master of your jet, but on that macro understanding of flight as a whole. Everything from the systems and the way that radio waves transmit through atmospherics. Why is the X band different than the C band? All that conceptually, systems wise, down to the flight dynamics, down to some theories that I have used constantly, like boundary avoidance theory, which is probably my favorite thing that I picked up from test pilot school. And for all the pilots out there, fence in if you haven't heard this, because you're going to love this. So boundary avoidance theory is the concept that human beings are awesome at following a dot on the horizon and are absolutely terrible at avoiding boundaries. So if I give you the exact same task, but in one way I tell you, hey, drive down this stripe and just follow the stripe, that's easy. And we can do that. We do that very well. If on the other hand, I say, hey, don't hit these two walls, go that way, and whatever you do, don't hit these two walls. We are so bad at this. So we do what pilots know as a PIO, or a pilot-induced oscillation. Mm-hmm. But this is a very real thing in the system of human systems. And if you try to avoid boundaries, you will grow in amplitude until you hit something. It's just the way our brains work. Never would have thought of it. Never would have thought of it. I think we all feel it as pilots, right? When
Mm-hmm.
we have tradecraft that is based on boundary avoidance theory, like put your eyes on the horizon when you land. Don't stare at the runway because you'll try to avoid that boundary.
Yeah.
But to have it articulated from an education perspective, wow. I mean, it really sinks in, and they make you go do it. They make you go fly next to other airplanes with dissimilar formation, and they shrink the boundaries on you until you PIO, and they're like, there it is.
Wow.
Really fascinating course.
Wow. The psychology behind that is just fascinating. Because you don't think about it, but you can feel yourself do it. You can see yourself do it. So that's crazy.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And that was so applicable with the Thunderbirds.
Oh, I can't even imagine, because now you're taking 4 miles and taking it down to 18 inches.
That's right.
4 miles and 1,000 feet each direction down to 18 inches.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So, so now you're through weapons, you're through test, and you're headed to where? I mean, in your mind, you're headed to Cape Canaveral?
That was the plan.
Yeah.
that was the plan. And as Victoria articulates so well in the movie, she says, "Yeah, right, buddy, right." I mean, that's one of those things where, if you can imagine, at that point I was 33 years old. I was heading off from test pilot school down to Eglin, which is another big fighter test base down in the Panhandle in Florida, and going off to experimental test, which was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
But just to kind of recap, Victoria's statement is quite profound when she's like, "Yeah, right, buddy." Because when you're 13 and you say you want to be an astronaut, it's like, "Yeah, right." You get into college and you tell your girlfriend you want to be an astronaut, she's like, "Yeah, right." You get into the Air Force and it's still, "Yeah, right, buddy." And then at some point you graduate from test pilot school and it starts to feel like maybe not, "Yeah, right." Like maybe actually it's possible for the first time. Because you've now shrunken that sphere down to where you're one of the ones that can apply now.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went off to Eglin to do experimental tests, still flying F-15s, but now all the different types. So we had this airplane called the Advanced Eagle at the time, which ended up being the F-15 EX. And that was just getting started out of Palmdale. So I would go back and forth from Eglin to Palmdale to fly that thing. And in the meantime, experimental test is just fun. It's challenging in different ways. You fly about 7 times a week. There were days that I'd wake up and in the morning I would fly a Strike Eagle with a 5,000-pound bomb strapped to the bottom that had never been flown before, with a 2G limit and a fighter. And then I would go to my next sortie and it would be in an F-15C with a new computer that was messing with the flight controls. So you really have to bounce back and forth and kind of stay engaged on the current problem of the moment.
Yeah.
It's a really cool job. But that was the assignment that I applied to astronaut for the first time. And it was a big year for NASA. We had really just gotten back to American space. If you remember, we were going up on Soyuz for the most part. And so now SpaceX was in the fight. We had a couple of rockets in play and we were talking about deep space again. And so that astronaut board had 18,000 people on it. It was huge.
Wow.
It was like the biggest one in history. So I didn't have very high expectations as a brand new test pilot school grad. I was like, okay, yeah, well, I'll give it a shot. Right. So, was surprised to be called back for interviews. So that's down to 120. And then was surprised to get called back to the final round, which was down to 40 to 50 astronaut finalists, and spent a week interviewing. So I went through the whole process, really enjoyed it, really, really gained a lot of respect for what NASA does. And what they represent, and the people that you interview with, by the way, when you're in that last week, they're incredible human beings. I wish I could track them all down for you, Jim, because every one of them would be the best podcast you've ever had.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's
yeah. So I didn't make it that time. Right. I got the negative call. But although I didn't make it on that board, I was pretty excited because I'd gotten down to that small.
That's pretty close.
Right. And typically it takes a few rounds. In fact, I I couldn't help but notice that the Air Force people that got selected that time were in their 30s and like upper 30s, lower 40s. So kind of that post Squadron Command timeline. And so I was like, okay, like this good first shot. Off we go to, 4 more years of Air Force life, because the NASA boards happen every 4 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of important to the story, is there's a huge gap in there where you missed on that one, but you've got another 4 years to try to make something of yourself.
Yeah.
So off we go down that road. So brief detour at the Pentagon, but it wasn't a small impact on my life. That was 2017, 2018, working in Office of Secretary of Defense Policy under Secretary Mattis. It was a fascinating time in history. And I learned a lot, saw a big shift in geopolitics. That was when PACOM became Indo-PACOM, and that was the region I was working on. And we started to see this shift in partners and alliances over there as a counterbalance to the People's Republic of China. And it's just a really, really interesting time where I got to zoom out and remember what this is all about. Because ultimately, I was an Air Force pilot, but I was an Air Force officer first. And that's something we all have to remember, is whether the radar works or not is important. But the jets are part of a thing that's part of a bigger thing that's part of a bigger thing. And ultimately, all of that is to set American policy and put ourselves in a better position in the world.
Yeah,
So,
there's always 50 stars and 13 stripes behind you, right?
That's right. That's right.
There you go.
So pretty shaping all those short. And then from there, I went off to Squadron Command in the 59th. So
that had to have been a cool job.
It was. The 59th was, I thought it was the ultimate job at the time, and it still may be. It's really hard to say it wasn't, believe it or not. When I took over the 59th, and just to kind of contextually understand that, the 59th and the 422 that I talked about earlier with all 6 jet types is the same thing. So the 422 owns typically the younger officers that are responsible for the schedule, standardization, evaluation, training, and keeping the airplanes flying and maintained and ready to go. And then the 59th has a little bit more of the macro view of what we are doing with them. So think of the 59th as the test directors, the test executors, and the test debriefers of what happens. So you get to drive what that fleet is doing. It's a really rewarding experience. And I had a lot of good ideas back then. At least I thought I did. No, it was a really interesting time. I went into command right as the pandemic hit, and wow, going into command as the pandemic sets in with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and Victoria's stuck at home, was a difficult time. But I had really good mentors and leaders again in the Air Force. That's going to be a theme, by the way.
Yeah.
Who were really, I think we stood down for one day. For one day, we actually took a knee and said, "Hey, are we good? Are we okay?" And then we had enough information that we were able to kind of assess that. Well, one, we can't fly airplanes from telework, so we probably need to fly. And if we need to fly, then we probably need to bring our support functions in as well. And so, you know what? We're just going to be careful and do a couple of smart things to mitigate risk. But other than that, we've got to go. So we pressed forward and kept the train on the tracks for the Air Force, at least from the flight test side of the house. And I saw very similar things from most of the military, because you just had to. You can't not have defense. So that was all going on as we were coming up with a new way to test. And I'll go into that a little bit, because I think it'll speak to some of your audience. Flight tests for a long time had been pretty linear, pretty small sample size. The idea was safety of flight is of such great importance that when we come up with a new thing or a new jet, what we're going to do is we're going to make a very small number of them, and we're going to test them in one environment, and we're going to do that 1,000 times until we can prove that it doesn't have any problems. And then we're going to give it to the lieutenants and captains to let them go fly with it, and everything will be great. Well, enter software, and that concept doesn't work so well, because you can test in a single environment for 100 years, and you're still not going to find all the bugs that happen when you cross the international date line or enter a humid environment or yada, 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 right? So despite all our attempts to shape the environment to test rigorously, the truth is with software, you just need mass.
Oh, time to reboot.
Yeah, exactly. And so you just need mass. And so we came up with this concept called crowdsourced flight test. And the idea was safety of flight, you can't compromise on. Things like flight controls, hard goods, right? Those things need to be wrung out. But when it comes to mission system software, not so much. We can afford to get those fielded faster. We took the test cycle from 7 years down to like 6 weeks with the F-35. So every 6 weeks, you're pushing new software out to the fleet. It is going out to all the combat forces. They're ringing out thousands of test points every day for you, and we're feeding that data back to be able to edit and change things and update. It's a lot like the way your phone works.
In essence, you're telling them, here's what we think you should expect, and they're getting information back to you that says, actually, here's what you should expect.
Yes,
here's the actual in-flight data points that says the software might work, might not work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yep. And there's risk on both sides, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of people when we started pushing this concept that said, no, like we cannot take the chance that a lieutenant is in combat and has a system failure, right? We can't take the chance. And my argument back was, well, that's happening anyway.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if I take 5 years or 100 years with this small sample set, I'm still going to miss some of the holes. And so we just have to be smart about where we are willing to take that risk. And as we go through these software cycles, just keep that feedback loop and that conversation going.
Yeah, because all it takes is another thumb drive to plug in and say, hey, we're going to change it. We're going to fix it.
You got it.
Yeah,
you got it. And sometimes that thumb drive is an electronic signal from something that you didn't expect to, go through the radar and infect a system that's back in the back of the airplane. But it happens in the electronic world.
Yeah. Kind of like when, do you remember when the FAA said, hey, be careful because the new 5G signals are going to mess up your radar altimeter on final approach?
Yeah.
at extreme different frequencies. I haven't figured that one out yet, but I think
what's really funny is that 5G was going on as well when I was 59th Commander. And there were so few people who could define that for you. That you're like, you might be right, but I'm going to need you to tell me what frequency and pulse rate this thing is emitting at, because then I'll actually know.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying 5G, 5th generation. What does that mean?
Yeah, nothing.
Yep.
Okay, it means better latency. That's
right.
That's the only thing it means. Yeah. So after that, now you're headed for. You get somebody asks you a question, and it sounds like this.
Yeah. Let's go through it. So as I graduated from the 59th, it was time for round 2 for NASA applications. So if you can kind of imagine, it had all lined up the way I wanted it. So I had finished my director of operations tour. I had finished my command tour. I wasn't quite finished my command tour, but I was well underway to finishing at the 59th. I had all the credentials. I was the right age. I was ready to go. And I applied for NASA again. And, same thing. It's a very long process. So it down selected to the qualified, then the highly qualified, and then the callbacks to interviews for the second time. By this point, I knew.
Time out a second.
Yeah.
So when you're making application, you're pretty confident that you've maybe done at least as much, but probably more than they would have expected.
Yes.
In
this case, because I had gone on to command a test squadron, I was pretty happy with my application at that point, for what it's worth. Now, I'm not going to pretend that means anything to the NASA astronaut board. They've got such a variety of applicants and such a difficult job of building not the best team, but the right team for the mission that they're going after next, that, you never know. And I've had many mentors to me. Heck, I'm friends with a lot of the astronauts, right? Like so even they'll tell you, like, don't ever make this your plan. just go forward with your life and throw applications out the side window and hope one of them boomerangs back. But you can't, you don't know what they're looking for, and they don't even know. So, with that in mind, though, this was the window. This was the optimal window, I thought. And so I pitched into that fight again, and was well down the road, and hadn't put the slightest thought into the Thunderbirds ever. Which wasn't the plan at all. It was, they were certainly an influence on me as a kid, but more of a peripheral one. As, hey, that's cool too. I want to fly airplanes and go to space. So with that context, my friend Brick called me, and he had just gone through a really tough time. He had to remove an officer. That was the third one he removed from his team throughout his time. The pandemic had taken down his squadron for a year. He had a lot of time to reflect on how to make the Thunderbirds extraordinary. And so he's in the middle of that. And he gave me a call, and he asked, "Hey, will you apply to take this team?" And I said, "No." No, sir. Not because I had any lack of respect for it, but it's just because I had a plan, and
wasn't part of the plan.
I had a plan. It wasn't part of the plan. 4-year-old me knew exactly what my life was going to look like. And so I obviously had to follow that guidance. So when he asked me that, I initially said no. It wasn't my skill set. But he is an extraordinary leader. And I think that comes through somewhat in the movie. And frankly, I wish the whole movie had been about Brick. It would have been better. But he's the kind of person that you listen to when he talks. And so I took a week and I went down there and I spent some time with the team. And what I saw was astounding. It was just amazing. This reform that he had started, he had done all the hard parts. He had broken it. He had let go of the people that needed to be removed. He had stood up in front of the 4-star and said, "We're broken and we need to do better. And here's how we're going to do it. I need all these authorities to be, blessed by you so that I can actually act independently." And he got it signed, and, he was
in the military.
That was just unbelievable what he was able to set up for. And then he just ran out of time. Yeah. And that's when he asked me to come and finish the job effectively. And so I still walked away from that going, okay, that's amazing, but I'm probably not the guy because I've got this plan. And man, how ideas will infect you as time goes on. So, I walked out of there and went back to life as normal, and, eventually decided, okay, I'll throw my name in the hat, but I'm going to make it clear that there's a really good chance that I'm not going to finish this, application process. And by the way, I've already done Squadron Command. So the last thing you want to do is pitch back into that missile engagement zone again for another round of pain. Right. Anyway, to make a long story short, it just, as I got to know the team better and I got to see Brick's vision better and better, I was like, God, this is just not about me anymore. And it's time to take all the skills the Air Force poured into me and give something back. And, I made a promise to General Kelly. He's the 4-star that you see in the movie who's evaluating us, when he was Air Combat Command commander. I made a promise to him at one point behind the sound cart watching the certification for Brick's last team that if I was the one picked, that I would withdraw my NASA application and get this job done. And he picked me. So I had to follow through.
Yeah. It's not a good time to say, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, astronaut selection for that 2021 board was on the day of change of command for the Thunderbirds. So I'm literally on the stage taking the guide on to take command of the team when they announced the next astronaut board. So thank God I withdrew the application, because that could have been a very awkward moment where I was like, "Oh, sorry, just kidding. I gotta go." And, I mean, would never have let that happen. But can you imagine? You would have soaked up all the training resources in that off season, just to give it back and have someone else try to come and jump in. It was just
Right.
it was one of those decisions where, even though it was the most difficult decision of my life, it was also obvious. It was also obvious because it would have been selfish to say no to Brick and continue the childhood path when, everything that was me at that point, it wasn't me, it was the Air Force. The Air Force sent me to weapons school. The Air Force sent me to test pilot school. They made me a great pilot. It wasn't individual. And so the decision couldn't be either.
All right. So now you get to slide into the role of Thunderbird 21.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You're the oldest trainee in the Thunderbirds.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How tall are you, by the way?
I'm 6'1", so I'm not super tall, normal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you think about that and you're a swimmer and you look pretty tall on television. So, but that's even a bit tall for a fighter pilot, isn't it?
Yeah. The new jets are pretty. Yeah, you have the entire human spectrum that fits in an F-35 or an F-22. F-15 was always a big airplane anyway.
Yeah.
The Viper's not big, though.
Yeah.
The Viper's a little guy. And it's, man, I felt it in that airplane. But there were taller guys than me on the team. Thunderbird 5, Thunder, he's really tall. Zeke is pretty tall. So those guys look down on me. So you can do it. You can squeeze in there. I think about 6'6" is probably the limit for a Viper, and it's not going to be a comfortable ride, but you'll get through.
Yeah. So fair warning. I have my flight doc was a flight surgeon for the Air Force, and
awesome.
And he kept looking at guys saying, why is everybody mad at me? Why doesn't nobody want to fly with me? And they pointed at the F-16 that had 2 chairs in it, and they said, "Who wants to drive a Suburban?"
It's fair. It's fair. Oh, by the way, for the aviation oriented members of your audience there, the F-16D, the 2-seater, flies very differently than the F-16C.
Okay.
And most of it is actually in the lateral directional control. So the rudder side of it is it's awful. Especially
mushy?
Well, it's really touchy, but it also is divergent. So when you put that big centerline tank on it, which you have to put on it because the back seat replaces your internal fuel tank. Yeah. So you need that centerline tank, and that it basically is a wind catcher that's forward of center of gravity, which any test pilot will tell you that's always bad. So there's a reason tails are in the back. It's so that when you catch a wind gust, it corrects itself. But when you put that thing in the front and you catch a wind gust, it keeps going. And so it's divergent. And when you're trying to fly formation and you're counting single digit inches, nobody wants to be in the airplane that divergently moves as you're trying to refine this formation. So you're constantly dancing on the rudder to keep that thing stable.
AKA the station wagon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so now you're at the Thunderbirds, and what is like day one like?
Intense. In fact, I've never seen a Thunderbird 1 that thinks they can do it. It's completely impossible and completely overwhelming. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I wasn't a bad pilot. At that time, I graduated from both of our elite flying programs. Like, I was pretty confident in my flight skills. And then I tried the Thunderbird profile for the first time with Brick. And first of all, Brick was a 3-year commander. The guy was amazing because he stayed through that pandemic year. So he set a bar way high, for a new guy. And on top of that, the show had been rewritten just in that pandemic year. And so this was a totally new show. It was quite a bit more difficult to fly. And the expectations were really high because Brick's team was really good. The first time I flew the Diamond Pass and Review, which is that maneuver where we're really, really close together and, you're expected to try to crash into the ground and get bumped up above it. Well, I was single ship, so I didn't have any wingmen with me except the one that was observing. And I missed show center by about 2 miles. So just kind of build perspective on how hard this show is. you get to a
Yeah.
point where you're trying to hit within like 20 feet of altitude and about 50 feet on either side of show center, and very critical of yourself when you miss that window. And no, that is not how that starts. So
Yeah.
I didn't know where to perch. I didn't know where to aim that thing. I missed show center by 2 miles, and man, it just cascades from there. Like, you have no idea which end is up or what's going on. I had a very healthy respect for air demonstration after that first sortie, and also was pretty confident that I couldn't do it. I was like, I'm not the guy. You gotta find somebody else. Rick, sorry, I was wrong. I'm gonna go back to my previous path.
Oh, dude, you're making me feel so good. I went into my first week of jet training and I was like, honey, I made a big mistake. I can't do this. I don't know how to fly this thing. It's nothing. It's not even an airplane. How do I get out of this and save face?
Exactly. Yep. And then fortunately, after living that 2 years later, when you're training the new Thunderbird one, you've seen that face before. So you're like, oh, no, it's okay. Like, I promise you're going to be fine. You just need about 50 more reps before you're going to start to think maybe you can do this someday.
Yeah.
But, one of the big parts of the reform of the team was getting the old Thunderbird 1 out of the way as fast as possible. And very similarly, breaking that stovepipe that used to be number 3 trains 3, who trains 3, who trains 3, who trains 3 for the rest of history, because that was a stovepipe. And it was the same for all the positions. And so what you used to have, if I may go back to the old way, what used to happen is 1 would train 1, and it was very linear. And the idea was safety based initially. It was, hey, Thunderbird 1 is going to fly with the new Thunderbird 1, and we're going to use the old wingmen, the ones that are experienced, so that they can't possibly get into a safety situation. So they're going to fly off of new 1. And in the meantime, old Thunderbird 1 was going to stay around in the squadron for months after change of command and train the new wingmen. And you can understand that it wasn't any intention of making a mistake. It was just that sounded safer. When you say it out loud, it still kind of does. Well, the problem with it is that you're not building as a team. You're building individual skill sets that don't cross out to that team building together. So again, this credit to Brick for making this big change as I came in, but his idea was, we're going to stop doing that. So you're going to fly me. I was going to fly with my new team members on day 1. And the internal accountability was going to come from changes in the formation. So number 3 became 4. That became the diamond instructor pilot that could see the 2 wingmen. And that was a great move. And then the solos did the same thing. You graduate from 6 to 5. That stovepipe is now broken. So everybody's learning something new at the same time.
Yeah.
And that very first sortie, all you do is fly straight and land. But you do it as a team. You do it as 1 through 6. And so you build those skill sets together. And we were able to go to certification in my first year, 50 high shows ahead of where we had ever gone to certification before. Wow. You would typically do that stovepipe training, and then just a few sorties out from certification, you would have what's called Delta Day, where you would throw everybody together for the first time and try to fly the show. And of course, it went terribly. You're all learning each other's quirks and personality traits and everything, all as you're trying to certify. And you would go to certification on like your 3rd to 5th time flying the show. We were going, you actually hear this in the movie. Like, I think I say we're on Delta 62 today, which means the 62nd time that we've flown that high show together. Yeah. And by building as a team like that, we got to a point where, like Jim, I can tell the inflection in their voice. Like when 4 answers me, when I make a maneuver call back left of the Diamond Per, if I hear 4, I know, all right, life's good back there. Everybody's flying well. If I hear 4, I'm like, ooh, something's wrong. Yeah. And it just tells you so much about what to do next and how hard to push and where to take the formation, and even sometimes to knock it off and ask questions. So, all
right. Well, let's take a break. We're going to dive into the team and the movie here shortly. And we'll be right back, Grampian Nation, with Colonel Justin Astro Elliott. Stand by. Grampian Nation, I wanted to say thank you. You have made Building Men, a category bestseller on Amazon. We're doing phenomenal on Barnes & Noble. If you have not yet read Building Men, I'd encourage you, go online, find a copy wherever you get books, and give us a great review. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the next time we get to chat on the Grampian. Hey, at the Grampian, we only take sponsorships where we actually use and love the products, and you all know I love my dogs. At Canine Meats, they believe every pup deserves healthy, satisfying treats that are going to help them perform at a higher level. Get Canine Meats. Grampian Nation, welcome back to our chat with Justin Astro Elliott. Hey, buddy.
Hello.
Here we go again. Talking Thunderbirds. So, how intimidating is it? You don't know what you know but you're walking in. By any measure, this is the best demonstration squadron in the world. And I'm not trying to diss on the Blue Angels, but we don't do Navy landings. There's enough said right there. How intimidating is it?
Extremely. I actually think if you don't approach the Thunderbird 1 job with a little bit of reluctance and a little bit of concern about your own abilities, you are probably the wrong person to have the job. You cannot join the squadron with something to prove. It's got to be a humble confidence that you've been through some difficult things before, and so you're going to fight your way through this one too.
Yeah.
And I really, that's so important. You have to approach it with an extreme sense of humility because it is that hard. And if you don't walk in the door thinking that, you certainly will after your first few training events.
Yeah.
Where you're missing show center by miles and rolling upside down and then trying to flip back over right away because you're absolutely convinced you're going to hit the ground. And at some point you kill off your survival instinct and are able to fly the show, but it takes a really long time.
Yeah. So, isn't that true then of the other 5 Thunderbirds as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It sure is. And I think one of the biggest positive changes we made, and you'll hear that phrase a lot because there were a lot of really good ones, but one of the biggest ones was bringing flying evaluations back for the wingmen and even for the boss, because it gives the applicants that sample of how hard it is. It gives them that buy-in to the challenge they're about to face. And it's a character evaluation to really see, hey, how do you deal with the impossible? And when you get through it, are you still in or are you done? Because I like to describe our flight evaluations as a character evaluation disguised as a flying evaluation, because what we ask them to do is jump in the back of an F-16. Most of them haven't flown it before, by the way. They're F-15, F-35, F-22, and so on. And we put them in the back and we have them fly loops and rolls off Thunderbird 1's wing. And then we have them do the Bonton roll, which is the simultaneous roll right next to another airplane, and then the burst. And it can't be done, right? Just to be clear, no Thunderbirds are allowed to listen to this while they're applying. You can't do it. So, and that's exactly the point of the evaluation is you can't do it. And when you can't do it, what does your character show? When it's revealed, are you the kind of person that's going to put you and me in a really dangerous situation by fighting for a position you're incapable of holding? Or are you the kind of person that's going to just give up and float away? Neither of those are the answer. We're looking for balance, someone who can accept failure, but will continue to strive to improve every time they make the attempt. And those are the ones that make great Thunderbird pilots because they've got that humility to stay safe, but also that drive to push forward.
Yeah. And a lot of pilots will understand that because remember the first time you ever did steep turns and you were told to hold altitude and hold attitude and hold pitch and to keep that 30-degree turn and then turn the other way and come out on the same heading. And you're like, I can't do that. There's just no way. Take that to like 10x, 100x. That's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, steep turns are still impossible. I'm willing to say this to your audience. General aviation pilots need to know that they've already done the hardest thing. Flying a completely unaugmented Piper or Cessna with a power disadvantage and Dutch roll characteristics and I've flown just about everything, Jim.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I don't know that it gets harder than steep turns where you have to come out on the same heading.
Yeah.
Fighters are cheating. They fly like video games. It's super easy. Now flying 7 inches apart is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But the jet itself flies really well.
So now you're leading a team of elite pilots. You're not certain you can do the work, but there's leadership challenges that come along with that. Mm-hmm. How are you balancing these right out of the gate?
Yeah, I think you've hit on the thing. So all of us that are in any kind of position that means something, and I mean from all walks of life, forget about the 0.5% of people who are serving in the military. There's another 99.5% that are challenged just as much. And I think it's important that we in the military don't forget that. We all deal with what I think I would describe as the prevailing emotion of guilt. And I know that's not what anyone wants to hear, but I think it's the reality. You at any given time want to be the great pilot that you need to lead the team, and that's the right thing to do. Oh, by the way, it's also the right thing to do to be a great commander and take care of all of your people's problems that pop up and to get them to the next thing that they're striving for and all the challenges that come with command of 135 people. And oh, by the way, you've got the kids and your wife back home, and it's the right thing to do to spend as much time as possible with those kids to be there for them and to show them how important they are and to be there for your wife and, to show respect to her for everything she sacrificed for you. These are all the right thing to do, and they form a triangle of impossible, right? And so at any given time, maybe you get to pick 2 out of 3 to focus on.
Yeah.
And that's going to come with guilt for the one that you're not focusing on in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think the best you can do is balance them so that no individual node falls apart.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I know you know that. I know
keep it out of crisis mode, right? You're just keeping all 3 out of crisis mode.
Right. Yeah. But then also with a sense of drive, right? Because you can't just be a passenger in any one of those things either. No. You can't just check in with your family. You've got to think about what's best for them as they progress forward. Same thing with the airplane, same thing with command.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't know. I don't know that. I think one of the things I'll point out here that's a real challenge that our society deals with today that maybe wasn't a factor 100 years ago, is what I'll call the Facebook perfect fatherhood, right? Yeah. Where, if you look online, you're going to be told that everyone quit their job and stayed home and everything's roses and the shoes match. And, gosh, it's just wonderful being a dad. So that's not true.
Snapshot.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And so you could find yourself lulled into this concept from our social networks of should I be spending 100% of my time with my kids? Is that the right thing to do? And I think Victoria and I, fortunately, were able to talk about this enough to create a sense of balance in one another of no, because what message does that send to the kids?
Yeah.
If they never see mom and dad strive for anything that matters, if they never see mom or dad do something in the name of service to something greater than themselves, then what message have you sent? Have you sent the message of, yep, kids, you're amazing. You're the only thing that matters. And then what?
Yeah.
And so there is a balance there that I think parents have to hit. And oh, by the way, this, we talk about kids a lot and your spouse, but my single pilots dealt with the same level of sacrifice because they're trying to build relationships. They meet somebody and they have to tell that person hey, sorry, I got to go fly twice every day. I have no weekends. I'll never spend time with you unless you come on the road with me. And no, by the way, there's nowhere for you to stay. So let's get married. So we all face that guilt, whether it's with your family or your personal life, it's there either way.
Yeah. How did you meet Victoria?
Victoria and I met in college.
Okay.
So I was an engineer and she was a political science international studies major. She was a year younger.
There's no compatibility there, man. You can't get married now.
No. And so we had this intersection, this one class that we intersected with called computers and the law. So a little science and a little bit of law. And I met her there, and she stood out to me right away. And I remember she had an assignment where she had to write a paper about somebody who does something that she does, but in a very different way. And we were both musicians in our own ways. She's a real musician. She's a like classical violinist. She played in the Vegas Symphony, first violin, like really, really good.
Wow.
And I'm really, really bad at guitar. And so I think that was the difference that she was looking for to write this paper. And for some reason, she chose me. So we kind of met that way. Like, you know, that it was really funny that she wrote that paper, and apparently her professor told her, "Hey, you're going to marry this guy someday." And sometimes the prophecy fulfills itself. And so here we are.
There you go. Wow. And how long have you been married?
We've been married
in
since
college
2009,
or
so
right after college or?
yeah, a little bit after we left college. I went into the Air Force. She went into public service as well. She was a congressional budget office young officer, and then went into the State Department as a foreign service officer, and then went into the intelligence world. And you know, she and I went like, you know, totally different directions physically. There were points where she was in China and I was in Las Vegas, and you know, we knew that we were going to be together, but it just took a minute to physically make that happen. So yeah, 09. So 16 years now.
All right. Congratulations, man. That's good on you. So, one of the things when I was watching the movie, and for you folks who haven't heard, go on Netflix, pay your $7.99 a month or whatever, but go on Netflix if for no other reason than to find Justin and his team. We're going to talk a lot more about the team, but to find him on the team, and the name of it is the Elite Thunderbirds or Elite.
Yeah, it's Air Force Elite Thunderbirds. If you search for Air, I think it pops up right away. So.
Yeah, Air Force Elite Thunderbirds. It came out in May of 2025, and it's about the 23 season. So, and it is a spectacular piece of, I'm going to say docudrama, because there's a lot of drama there, but it's all real stuff. So it's a documentary, but it's like epic cool. And my wife is a nervous flyer. But she's watching and she's loving it with me last night. So go on Netflix and check it out. Astro is like, and I'm going to call you the lead actor in it because it really focuses mostly on you and the stresses and things like that. So number one, congratulations. What a program. And number two, if you haven't seen it yet, folks, go out and watch it and leave a great review or something, because I don't think he gets paid anymore for it. So one of the things that struck me is blind trust, because in aviation and other parts of work, like, we don't give people blind trust. It's not something that, I don't even know if you can even earn it. It's not even a concept that I have outside of my marriage. But in my marriage, I have blind trust. And so I was thinking about that. I'm like, but you spent more time with those Thunderbird pilots than you did with your wife.
Yep.
So there's some commonalities there. There's some threads. Can you put those together for us?
I can. So the blind trust concept is really born out of necessity. If you want to make the team extraordinary, then you have to trust each other. And factually, this applies on the Thunderbirds. I am certain it applies on elite sports teams. I am certain it applies in our personal lives and our marriages. Anything where you are truly interdependent with severe consequences of failure, you have no choice but to build that blind trust with one another. For the Thunderbirds, it's earned. You know, we don't start with the diamond pass and review at, you know, single-digit inch wingtip clearances. We start significantly farther away than that. We start with a lift vector that does not hit the ground, and we slowly build that cooperation together where, you know, you get to a point where Zeke and I are able to do what we call the squeeze, where I set my lift vector to crash. He slides into position, provides that lift to fix the lift vector away from the crash vector. And there's this point where right when I'm starting to feel like, oh man, is he going to get in there? I feel the squeeze. So I feel his lift push my wing. I then squeeze back onto him so that we're sandwiching that bubble of air between us, between his canopy and my wing. And we kind of squeeze down on each other. And when I feel that, I know we've got the perfect pass, and I know it's going to scoop through right where I want it. But you really do have to have faith in your teammates to do their job, and they have to have that same level of faith in me to put the formation in the right position to where,
Wow.
if they have to bail out, they're not bailing out into a rock or a building or the ground or
Yeah.
whatever may come our way. So it's a very mutual thing. It absolutely applies to our relationships. And much like the Thunderbirds, it's not, day one on your first date, you don't have blind trust. You probably shouldn't, like give
Yeah,
it a
no
minute.
kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. So in effect, you're using his wing and his canopy bubble for ground effect.
Yes, that's right. That's exactly what's happening.
So for all you pilots out there, he's trusting his number 3 like you trust the ground to be there.
Yes.
Well, the ground doesn't move, Justin. I'm sorry. Wow. That's a lot of muscle memory, man.
It is. And it takes reps and reps and reps, and it takes that discipline to go from, it's funny. In almost any walk of life, you can get 95% good at something pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And initially it feels great because you're seeing all this progress, and it doesn't take that much time relatively to get to 95%. And then you have to decide, do I have the discipline? Does my team have the discipline? Do we believe in what we're doing to such an extent that we're willing to now take way, 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 way more time to refine that last 5% and make this thing truly extraordinary? Because if you're not willing to do that, then when we can make the diamond pass and review really easy, you fly it just outside of that air bubble, and now the flight lead is just flying his plane, and number 2 is flying his plane next to it, and it's great.
Don't hit each other.
Right. You probably won't hit, and things would be great, and I think most people could do that. But the entire point of the Thunderbirds is to be impossible. We are not looking to impress the 12-year-old kid. That matters too, but the 12-year-old kid who doesn't know much about aviation, they're going to be pretty amazed by anything they see up there. But we need the 15-year fighter pilot to look up there and say, whoa, like that's impossible. We need that. That is our mission, right? Because when you get to that level, well, now your recruiting goes up within the team. Now, I have noticed, and Jim, I know you have noticed this, is no epiphany, but people chase the impossible. People chase elite. People chase challenges.
Mm-hmm.
People actually step away from something that they think they could already do.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a moderate amount of effort for something that's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
But people chase elite. And so we had to get there.
And so when you talk about that, you talk about extraordinary things, and what the Thunderbirds accomplished under your command was by any measure extraordinary. But you got there by consistently, and I'm going to use this theme a little bit because when my son and I were building a business that we built telecommunication towers, we encourage our people, just do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know the right thing to do the best right thing. And if you don't know the best right thing, then call us and we'll tell you what it is. But you're counting on people to get to extraordinary by series of increasingly better decisions.
Yeah.
How do you build that
a lot.
culture, man?
I think you really articulated that in an interesting way. I like it a lot. In fact, I'd probably steal that from you, the whole do the right thing and then do the best right thing. Yeah, that's it. Right. And so much like aviation, if I could predict all the things that we would face as challenges on this team, whether, across 32 different job types, by the way, right? We've got 6 pilots, we've got 12 officers, and we've got 135 people that do everything from medical tech to doctor to show center operator to communications expert. We've got all these jobs, and every single one of them is going to face challenges. And when you're flying twice every day as one, what I definitely knew I couldn't do was handhold every single one of those 135 people through all of those different challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I was left with one option, and that's empowerment and building a sense of ownership. And to build that sense of ownership and empower, they had to have the why behind the team.
Yeah.
So that they understood the purpose behind this whole thing. And if I go back to a darker time on the Thunderbirds and you ask the team, hey, why do you exist? Why are the Thunderbirds here? They would say recruiting, $14 million expenditures, but no problem. We're going to get this number of recruits back for it. So all's good. We're a recruiting squadron. We are not a recruiting squadron. If we were a recruiting squadron, that's not motivating. A recruiting squadron that flies fighter jets, that is not motivating to me. I knew it wasn't motivating enough to the team. So it was important for me as the boss to articulate the real why behind the team. And for that, I looked at history. And what I found was the Thunderbirds were never meant to be a recruiting squadron. If you think about it, if they were a recruiting squadron, they would probably at least be Air Force colors, right? Like blue and silver, and they would have Air Force across the wings somewhere. Yeah. And that's not what you see. Yeah. What you see is red, white, and blue jets that barely have the Air Force logo on them at all. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that. And that's that the Air Force never really had an issue bringing in people who wanted to fly. Now, the Navy actually did, because when the Air Force was founded, Navy was afraid of losing their aviation wing to the Air Force in 1947. It's not coincidence that in 1946, the Blue Angels were founded, and they are blue and gold, and they have U.S. Navy in giant letters, right? That their purpose is to remind the world, like,
go Navy.
Right. Navy pilots are awesome, and they are.
Yeah.
But the Air Force mission, the Thunderbird mission, was founded in the middle of the Korean War. And it was a time when we were pretty divided as a country, and there was a loss of trust between the American public and its institutions. Right down to the aircraft themselves. People trusted propellers out of World War II. They didn't trust these new jet things. Yeah. And so we needed a way to build trust with our population. And so the Thunderbirds were kind of formed to be America's team. And the why behind that, when you articulate it, you can't unhear this, right? Like, when we are divided, just like we were in the pandemic, right? When you are divided, there are very few uniting forces that are hard to say no to. And one of them is just human achievement, like extraordinary human achievement, whether that's an Olympic athlete, whether that is an amazing musician or a piece of art, or flying the Thunderbirds demo. Human achievement is a uniting force. And then I took that one step further and said, oh, by the way, unlike some of those other examples, we are supposed to represent human achievement in the name of service to something bigger than ourselves. And there's the special sauce right there. There's your magic. There's your uniting why behind the team. And with that, I was able to say, so go do that with your jobs, which means take every opportunity to engage with the population that we're there to see. Don't ever get demanding. Don't ever be, overly demanding of someone else's time or assets from that community, because that community sees you once every 4 years. Be a giving team. Yeah. Give, and these are Brick's words, but I use them all the time. We needed to hire and grow the kind of people that were willing to pour themselves into building the Thunderbirds brand, not the kind of people that were joining to take the Thunderbirds brand and suck the life out of it to build their personal brand. Yeah. There's a huge difference in those character types. Yeah. And if you empower the right ones, then they'll do it for you.
Yeah. And so when you bring up team, I'm stunned by the disparity of the skill sets. And this is evident in the movie, especially with your mechanics. Because, so I can't stop there, but I got to go your mechanics and your announcer and your flight doc and the fuelers, and there is such perfection in precision, and everything that the Thunderbirds do is precise, and that is by requirement, by definition, and by expectation on your part. But you're managing this. Tell me a bit about the ground crews that care for your pilots.
Yeah, they're amazing human beings. And the Thunderbirds it was such a privilege to command that squadron because we are integrated. We're truly, it's not like that. In most of the Air Force, maintenance is run by a colonel and ops is run by a different colonel. And you always have this kind of push-pull relationship of, are the jets ready? I need to train more. No, I need to maintain more. Okay. But on the Thunderbirds, it's one big team. And so that uniting concept of why behind the team really works. But I want to talk about these individuals because they don't get enough camera time. They don't get enough autograph time. And I can't imagine doing what they do. So they are on the road just as much as the pilots, if not more. When we land at the end of the day, their day starts and they get to build the jets back, from all the broken conditions that we give them when we check in. Sometimes they're up freezing in 10-degree weather in the middle of the night to make this happen. And they have the exact same attitude that the Thunderbird pilots have, which is, yep, there is no self in this problem. There is a mission, and that mission is going to go the next day, no matter what it takes or how many hours I have to put into it. And now let me give you some of the specifics because it's just astounding what they're doing. We are not flying these shows on Air Force bases. There's no back shop. There's no maintenance group that I can turn to when I need a hydraulic cart or an oil cart or a part. Everything that goes to these shows to land in New York City or Chicago, right? Everything that goes has to be on the back of the C-17. So it's not just the maintainers. When you say ground crew, we have C-17 load crews on the team. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly how to pack that airplane in a matter of a couple of hours so that we can jump on a C-17, move our entire life and deploy to a new location that has no backshop support, download it all within hours, and the next day fly a double turn air show, and then go do it again, 3-4 cities a week sometimes.
Yeah.
So they're amazing. And I'm going to add even more because every one of those people has a second job. Everyone on the Thunderbirds has 2 jobs. Mine's commander and leader of the demonstration. We have Thunderbird 7, who you see as the evaluator and the announcer in the movie. Mm-hmm. Well, by the way, he's my second in command. He's the director of operations. He's responsible for 100% of the logistics of moving that team across the country. Let's look at Thunderbird 8. Thunderbird 8 goes alone with his crew chief one day ahead of the large team and builds the air show on the ground before the C-17 and all the jets and everything arrives. In a traditional Air Force squadron, you would send a group of 5 to 7 people in advance for a week to build the same level of operation. We do that with one person and their crew chief. Yeah, our doctor runs a light gun during the show that is, the way I find show center. The guy's a medical doctor, right? He has better things to do.
And he's a pilot. I mean, props to him. There's some cool there. And he's got a great barber.
He does. Yeah. So, Angry is such a great embodiment of this team, there's no job too small, and we all have our logistics job that we do day to day. And then when it's showtime, we all snap into show mode and do our show job. Mm-hmm. And it just, it's such a miracle. It's the way that everything should operate, but it's just so hard to build that.
Yeah. So, you've got 6 pilots that are traveling across the country, eating in restaurants, eating, grocery store food. Sometimes when life is really good, it's grocery store food, and mess halls and things like that. But they're traveling amongst the public. Mm-hmm. And at some point during the season, they get a cold or they just aren't feeling right. And they don't get a day off.
Nope.
So your flight surgeon has to have his A game going the entire time. That A game, man, is at another level, isn't it?
It is. And you said it. You don't get to be off. That literally, like when you're on the road with the Thunderbirds, short of a true tragedy back home, you're not going back to fix the problems back home. You're there, you're committed to the mission. It's very, very similar to a deployment. And it's like that, not because we're trying to be cruel or bring bravado to it or anything. It's just simply that once we've trained you, you are the only human being on Earth capable of doing that. Jump.
Yeah.
And that applies across the spectrum. So if I'm sick and I can't fly through it, there is no show.
Yeah.
Period. No exceptions. If number 5 is sick, then there's no lead solo. And so we know that going into it, and it's awesome that you honed in on Angry and the flight doc's role in that, because can you imagine the stress that guy's under? I'll tell you right now, if he followed the books that we all have in the Air Force that tell us when we should and should not fly, there would probably never be an air show.
Yeah, this is where the FAA has to tune out for a minute.
Yeah, exactly. So, his job is to fix you almost like you would fix a professional athlete and be like, okay, I'm going to temporarily get you through this, and then you're just going to be a heap on the ground when you land, but you're going to live through this one. And that's the way he treats kind of all of us to get us through showtime. And then, you recover and do it again the next day.
So
really nonstop for him.
Yeah. So for non-pilots, we all can do the math. Like 2 Gs is taken from 200 to 400 pounds. It's pretty easy math. But that's not quite what it feels like. I've flown some aerobatics and I've gotten up to 5, but that was enough for an old man. What does it feel like to do? I mean, this is 45 minutes of external pressures on your body that are extraordinary.
Yep. The show's kind of a constant ride around 4 Gs for the diamond for the most part. And then sometimes, the solos are significantly higher than that. And all of our breakaway maneuvers were significantly higher than that. But even if we take the G out of it for a second, my number 4 from 2022, Strobe Taylor, described it extremely well on an applicant trip. He said he used to look at the applicants and say, do you have the discipline to stare at something for 45 minutes? I mean, try it. Like, pick an object and stare at that thing for 45 minutes, because that's the viewpoint that the wingmen have of my jet, by the way. It's one stripe, one rivet. In fact, we put a little sticker on their position on the bottom of my wing called the Gerber, where they line that up with a rivet because it's too intense to count the feathers under the wing to know where your position is. That's how refined these positions are. So he used to ask, do you have the discipline to just stare at something for 45 straight minutes? And oh, by the way, if you take your eye off it, you die.
Yeah.
That was his pitch. I'm surprised we had any applicants.
Yeah. Everybody tapping out then.
And that was all right. And that was the end of the team. And then, so you put that in perspective. Now add the G-force to it. Now add the blind trust element that, oh, by the way, every once in a while you get a flash of ground or the building while you're upside down. Yeah. And you have that like mental shock of like, I am in a place that no human should ever be right now. Yeah. Right. I'm upside down at 600 miles an hour, inches off of my friend and feet off of the ground in a really precarious situation. And I'm just staring at this blue stripe and hoping everything's going to be okay. And oh, by the way, I have some influence on whether everything's going to be okay, because if I panic and start to bobble or PIO, then that's going to ripple through the whole formation. And you can imagine how catastrophic this can get when somebody starts to fall apart. So
there was a focus in the movie, and Cajun, I believe, was his name, and a tragedy happened, and you used that, and a very emotional part of the film, but you use that to help people on your team understand what they were about to encounter.
Yeah.
Possibly. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's, I think the accident history of the team is such an important thing to explain in great detail to the new team. This is not a joke. If you're in a typical fighter squadron over X number of years and you lose one person, that is a huge tragedy, a huge deal. Obviously any loss of anybody is a tragedy, but it's rare. even in a combat squadron. The risk level for the Thunderbirds was kind of appropriate for the time in the middle of the Korean War. And as we progressed and aviation got safer moving forward throughout history, unfortunately, the accident rate on the Thunderbirds didn't change much. It still hovers around that 10%. And so that's a really sobering statistic that it's very important that our applicants understand.
And getting better.
It's certainly getting better. We need to continue to make it better, but I told you earlier, you have to approach this job with a sense of humility. And part of that is understanding the accident history on the team. And so I sit down with the new team and we go through 3 to 4 hours of accident history together. We go through every single crash from the very beginning to the Diamond crash to, fortunately, knock on wood, Cajuns was the last fatal accident in 2018. Mm-hmm. But we've had other crashes. They just weren't fatal. And there are lessons in all of those as well.
Yeah.
We don't want to throw away a jet in front of a crowd or otherwise.
Yeah.
And, all of the elite demonstration teams in the world, they have about the same accident rate. So it's very tempting to point fingers and say, well, these guys are doing fine. You're not. Fix it. Fortunately, it's really balanced. So, we all know the risk is just real. And when you're flying at that level, that's how it's going to have to be. There's no way around it. The only way to go around it would be to make what I believe would be an enormous mistake and try to automate this process.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how fast the world would lose interest. I know that 6 drones could fly really close together and do amazing tricks, but who would care?
Who cares?
We crave human experience, right? Like no one wants to watch a robot acting or a perfect piece of AI music. Like just not cool. Like we need to have that human connection. That's what we're there for. And so with that comes risk. It's important that the team understands that risk and is willingly pushing themselves towards it for that short span that they're on the team.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from the perspective of a combat soldier's dad, how touched I was by Cajun's parents and how they honored his sacrifice and his legacy forever for. Yeah. So
my favorite part of the movie, I think maybe easily the most impacting part of the movie, is the end of it when Cajun's parents get back up there again and say effectively that even though this cost them their son, that we should all get out there and continue to pursue our dreams and take chances. I mean, wow. Like what a courageous group of people.
Oh man, tough people. And again, I would encourage people to watch the movie. They did a wonderful job of honoring his legacy. So kudos to you, Mom and Dad. So the film also captures the personal sacrifices that your family made. And I don't want to overstep those at all. Victoria, she kind of gives you a love tap and says, "Don't die," if I remember that right.
Yes.
I've as a person who's been involved in our tower business in a high risk enterprise, what people, we suffer from gravity too. And the only thing I'm allergic to is gravity. How do you get through that with Victoria? I mean, that's stressful.
Yeah, it is. And, the burden that job put on Victoria is not fair. And, the movie doesn't even tell half the story of her. Like I said, she's a concert violinist. She's got a whole career that she, working in foreign service and intelligence. Like she's an incredible person that is effectively pausing all of that to make sure the kids have a decent life while I'm off putting myself at risk. Yeah. It's not a great deal for her. Yeah. And she was so brave about it. And oh, by the way, in this particular Thunderbird era, we also were like, yeah, so some cameras are going to come hang out in your house every morning to make sure they catch all of your worst moments so that we can, publicize that to.
You must be a whale of a salesman because she bought into that, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, you talk about letting people into your lives. This was about as intrusive as it gets. But we, just to put that to bed, we had a lot of trust in the film crew. They had proven really early with their sports documentary history that they were looking to tell a human story, and that all of these elements were critical to that story. If this had been a movie about airplanes, no one would watch it. They shouldn't watch it. If it was a puff piece, no one should watch it.
Yeah.
The message needed to be, even at the most elite level of aviation, this is hard, and we are working hard, and nothing's to be taken for granted. That had to be the message, and so Victoria bought into that, and that's why she was able to weather that storm and still do it with a smile on her face. We had help too. I won't pretend we did it alone. My parents would alternate with her parents to provide some support back home while I was gone.
Yeah.
But no amount of support was going to take away the mental anguish that it put the kids through.
Yeah.
Because, they don't care why I'm gone. They just want dad.
Yeah. So you have two boys, Declan
yep.
and Revan.
And Revan,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And they've now both flown an F-16, at least a remote control one.
That's right.
You need to watch the movie, folks. And how are they responding now? So now you're a bit more of a dad who's transitioned from 150, 200 days a year on the road to, we can't get rid of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
How's that working out for him?
I think they sometimes want me to go back to the Thunderbirds. No, we're really happy right now. In fact, I'd say like my primary, you're going to laugh at this, but the thing I get up for the most in life right now is teaching them music and playing music with them. So little cool. Declan, who you see in the movie is, like a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, he's playing drums now, and he's definitely better than me already. He's one of the best drummers I've ever played with. And Revan is playing guitar, and all of a sudden he can sing and play, which, by the way, that blows my mind. He's a 9-year-old kid. So we formed a little punk band. And that's like our reason for being. We get through school and work so that we can get back in the basement and play some music, which I'm sure Victoria, as a concert violinist, is just like,
I was gonna say the punk band alongside a concert violinist is probably not a great match. So.
It's hilarious because sometimes we need her to play the melody lines for us, and so she'll come down there and just put up with it. It's really funny. It's really funny. So we're having a great time, and I these are the things that I really missed when I was on the road all the time, and I think it's why the brilliance of the Air Force and the Navy in having this be a very temporary assignment so that you can go non-complacently and very intensely forward and reach that level of extreme achievement and then go back to a normal life.
Yeah. Which, and you're all in for a 2-year hitch, no matter what. It's like, there's no turning back once you get at least certified, right?
That's right. And it's pretty weird to hang it up too, by the way, when you realize like you're the best in the world at something at that moment, and now you're going to hand the helmet to somebody else and never do it again.
Yeah,
that is weird.
I can kind of understand. I was the CEO of an organization, and we moved to Boise, and I look around and I'm like, okay, somebody get over here and do, and there's no one there listening.
Yeah. And I bet that's really similar.
I call myself sometimes the recovering CEO. I think you're the recovering Thunderbird, man.
Yeah, forever maybe.
Yeah. So along with that, when you wear that blue flight suit and you got that big gaudy white patch on your chest, what does it feel like when you're walking away on the last day and you got a new guy? And he's now the guy, and you're not.
Yep. You have to continue to remind yourself that the whole point of this is for that guy to be better than you.
Yeah.
And especially as you wrap up that last show in November, it's always like the first weekend in November before Veterans Day that you fly your last show. And new Thunderbird 1 is there to watch, and the new Thunderbirds team is there to watch. And the second you touch the ground, it's not about you anymore. And you get a month between that show and change of command to give it all to the next guy.
Yeah.
So that when they take the guide on that stage, they're ready to build a better team than you ever built with all the lessons learned. And if we all think like that, then you get the result you have today, which is 70 years of tradecraft and lessons learned poured into an extraordinary thing that can change hands every year and still be that good.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so dangerous someday when someone doesn't think like that and tries to like walk out the door with all the skill. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. So all of your flying, when did you learn the most? Do you learn the most actually by doing it? I find that I find that I learn when I fly, and the classroom stuff is great,
Yeah.
but it doesn't last. I mean, even the memorization and the memory items that you have to just commit to memory, because they're the ones you can't screw up. But until you use it, and that's in the cockpit, they don't mean a whole lot.
100%. I think it all matters if it works synergistically together and if it's all purposeful. So I remember, a quote that we use all the time in the joint world, Eisenhower's quote that says, "Plans are worthless, but planning is everything."
Yeah.
And that applies so much, right? But you have to do that classroom time, even though none of it's going to be what you see in the sky. You have to think through and visualize those problems. And so I learn the most when I'm able to have the discipline to very deliberately chair fly something, to really think through one focus item that day, and then go execute it and either mess it up or get it right. And then come back and debrief that chain to completion. When you do that, you complete the loop. And I think that's the difference in people who have 1,000 hours and people who have 1 hour 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You can't just go through the motions, or you're not learning, and you're kind of counting on random lessons to show up, which sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And you've wasted the sortie.
Yeah. And then you're able to kind of put a timestamp on it, because you don't have to go back and relearn that. You don't have to, when you get that ingrained, and you can make it better, but you don't have to go back and relearn it, do you?
No, I think when you've visualized it, done it, and debriefed it, it's in there. And it's like the first time you flew and you couldn't possibly maintain level flight, and then somehow it goes into the back of your mind and becomes just subconscious intuition. The more you can pump into that section of your brain, the better you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the movie, we watched as Primo struggled. I mean, my heart went out to that guy. I was just, and I think everybody else watching it too we're just rooting for the dude, and they led us along. And I'm not going to do any, what do they call it when you mess up the ending? But how's he doing?
He's doing great. He in the end of the movie, you see him become the instructor for the next generation.
Yeah.
And let's go behind the curtain a little bit. You mentioned this. I'll keep the spoilers down, but you mentioned that the movie's an actual movie. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. It's a documentary, but it has quite a bit of story to it. And to do that, the producers, and I'm very thankful that they were the ones that took the project, because they've got that sports documentary background. So they know how to focus on one line to create that sense of drama. They did an awesome job. And so to do that, though, they had to focus on one maneuver, the high bomb burst. And so you've got an entire 90-minute movie about how to refine the high bomb burst rejoin. Yeah. What I like to remind everybody is that's one maneuver out of 42 in our show. So, while that was happening, we had the other 41 maneuvers we were all trying to learn and refine together as well. Mm-hmm. And I know it samples a few of the other ones, but there's a lot of really hard maneuvers in that show. Yeah. And so I'm going to say this because I want everyone to hear it. Primo's probably the best right wingman in Thunderbird history. I mean, so they happened to focus on his high bomb burst rejoin struggles, but he was so good at everything else that there just wasn't any drama there. And so we all struggle with one maneuver. I think you pick any Thunderbirds team in history and go like snapshot, April 5th, who's struggling with something, and every one of them is going to raise their hand, and they're going to have a maneuver that's like their thing at the moment. And so we go through those cycles over and over again as we build the team. But the documentary does such a good job of highlighting how hard it is when you're stuck. Yeah. And they do that through Primo's high bomb burst.
And that sticks with almost anything in pilotage,
Yeah.
because there's that one thing that's just harder for you to get,
Yeah.
and the only way to get there is to get there, and there's no shortcuts really until your body and your mind works together and you go, oh, and then you can do it like that is no big deal.
And there's no formula, right? Like
Yeah.
you know this. We've all been there when we're stuck. And you're like, "Hey, tell me the secret." We're like, well, there isn't one.
Yeah. Do it
Sometimes
again.
you're just gonna have a series of bad landings, and you just need to keep trying. you know?
Do it again. No, the bad landings we send to the Navy. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so we're going to land this airplane, and I think that that's a pretty important thing to do because I've taken so much of your time. So, number one, thank you for that, Astro.
Thank
You're
you.
at NORAD now,
Yes.
and give us the mission that you have now at NORAD, because you're the commander,
Chief of Current Ops.
chief of current ops.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It's an amazing job. It's an amazing job, and that's the Thunderbirds is 2 years of your life, and
Yeah.
this is my 21st year in the Air Force now. So
Yeah.
we talked about some of it, but there's so much to an Air Force career, and they make you change jobs constantly so that you never get comfortable, and you're always growing as an officer and a leader. It's really an incredible formula the Air Force has.
mhm.
The stage I'm at right now is I've promoted since the movie, so I'm a colonel now. Chief of operations for NORAD is what we call a joint tour. So it's our opportunity to actually step out of the Air Force and get that bigger picture of all the services working together.
Yeah.
And what's so special about NORAD is it's a binational version of that. So I've got Air Force, Marines, Navy, Army, Coast Guard, and Space Force. So the 6 U.S.
Yeah.
branches, and then all of those things for Canada as well.
Yeah.
And we all work in one building in Colorado Springs to defend North America as a continent against all threats in all domains. Let me give you an example of things I never would have thought of if you had told me that mission. So
Yeah.
I certainly was thinking about, nuclear strike and Russian bombers and all the things that you would imagine NORAD would do, tracking Santa. What I was not thinking about was hurricane civil support,
Oh, wow.
southern border policing, LA wildfires, Canadian wildfires.
Mhm.
You have at any given time something going wrong somewhere in the North American continent. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Pick any day, there's something going on somewhere, and all of that is our responsibility. So it's an amazing job to really get to know your continent and
Yeah.
to be able to work across all these lines. Similar to the Thunderbirds 32 job types, we've got all these civil support agencies that we are supplying with forces or augmenting or building up in certain regions at certain times. It's this huge logistics challenge. And the same way I described how impossible Thunderbird 1 seemed when I started, I feel the same way as chief of current ops at NORAD, because it's so overwhelming. I'm like, okay, I understand air things, but you're telling me I have to care about the land domain now and the information sphere and cognitive warfare from the Chinese Communist Party, and that's all my problem? Like, okay, that's a lot.
And you forgot Marine already too.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're defending North America from threats. That's like the role of NORAD is the umbrella over North America that says our job is to keep the American and the Canadian continent safe from all threats.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So were you at NORAD when that Russian balloon was trying to say penetrate our airspace, we'll say?
Well, it was a Chinese balloon, and yes.
Chinese balloon. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's more constant than you think. I don't want to go into classified stuff here, but there are attempts every day.
Did it make an exciting day?
Yes. I think anyone would tell you that.
I bet it did. All right. Well, so one of the things we do at the Grampian is we have an opportunity to point at people who have lived extraordinary lives. And you're still a young man, especially by my measuring stick. But you've lived an extraordinary life, Astro. And one of the things that we do is we always point to the people who mentored us, who got us where we are, whose influence on our lives is so tremendous that we got to give them props as we close the show. So who is that for you? Who affected you in such a significant way that you can't not say thanks?
I've got so many. And I'll point out a few that were absolutely crucial to me forming my character and taking some risks. The first one is my grandfather, Terry Doherty. He was 38 years in the Canadian Navy and the Canadian Air Force. And he was the one that sat down at my kitchen table when I was, I didn't have good eyes. I didn't think I was going to be able to fly in the Air Force. I thought I was going to be an engineer. And I was taking that leap into college going, hey, maybe, just maybe, they're going to change their laser surgery policy, which they did. And it all worked out, right? But my grandfather was the one that, when I was thinking, hey, like I got into Yale, like, am I really going to go into the Air Force with this? There's a lot that I could do with that degree. And he was the one that looked at me and said, the only thing that matters is a sense of purpose. And the military will give you that sense of purpose, and it'll be very fulfilling. And he was right. And inevitably, as I've grown up, I've seen so many people that start in other walks of life choose to go towards government service in some way, sometimes way later, right? Sometimes you pitch into the government, after you're a billionaire, and we're drawn to that, right? But he was the first one to articulate it, the first one to say, this is worth it, and this is worth your time. And he's the reason that I went into ROTC and pursued this career. He just passed away, Jim,
I'm sorry.
just a couple of months ago, unfortunately. So we lost him, but that influence is still there.
Well, thank you, Grandpa.
Yep. It was my grandfather, my mom's dad. And then as I get into my military career, I'm just so thankful for the consistency of Air Force leadership along the way. The folks I talked about earlier, like Gipper Bunch and Jack Ruby, who were willing to say, hey, do the different thing. Don't just go to test pilot school. Try doing both. I know it's not a thing, but I think you can maybe do it, and encouraged me to take that risk, to Dragon Tight Group for pushing me to test pilot school when I thought it was impossible. It hasn't stopped. Those mentors are still there, and I continue to meet more and continue to be encouraged by just people. I think anytime you engage one-on-one with a person, you learn something from them, and we should all just continue doing that. Get out of that short form media and start meeting actual people. We'll all grow from it.
Yeah. And be a mentor, because you can mentor on both sides, on the younger side and on the older side. Even us old guys need someone to point us in the right direction, especially when our computer isn't working right.
Yes, sir. Mostly that.
Yeah. Well, Colonel Justin Astro Elliott, I just want to just take a moment to first say thank you for your service. And I don't mean that from a, gee, buddy, thanks for your service thing. I mean, thank you for dedicating your life and your efforts and your focus and your concentration in the defense of this great nation. I appreciate it, and I know our audience does too. So thank you. Second thing is keep dreaming and keep marching forward. And especially you keep dreaming those Grampian-sized dreams. Thank you, Colonel. This is Jim, and I'm out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.